because if you get multiple members, it can be hard to heal that debuff. It does quite a bit of damage, and yeah, the boys just again having some issues as they were trying to just skip to the boss here. Just issues over issues, unfortunately for them. This King's Rest is just really not their dungeon today, as Perplexed is about to finish up King Dasar, and they're gonna make it out of that lower bracket, while the boys unfortunately are going to be eliminated once they lose this game here. But yeah, I mean, the boys played really well, but let's be honest here, it was almost unlucky that Perplexed played not so good yesterday and they had to play against them, right? Because Perplexed, they're known to be a really good team.
Yep, quick reminder as well, that 4% missing is from Shadow of Azul, so they are actually at 100% trash, and with King Dazar going down here in the next couple percent, Perplexed is going to take this series in 2-0, especially in this dungeon in a fashion that we're used to seeing from them, and this has got to feel good for them as they move on in our tournament.
That's right, Perplexed taking the win with a very strong King's Rest run, and sealing, of course, the fate of the boys, who just weren't really able to get into their groove throughout this tournament. And Agura, you mentioned it as well. They started going up against really tough opponents and quickly got knocked out of the tournament as a result. So Perplexed, though, a little over 20-minute run. It wasn't quite as fast as we saw out of Wunderbar, but they're like really, really close on that one, Dratnos.
Yeah, this actually was an impressively fast run, especially given that they used a bit of a safer strategy, right? You know, to be within a minute of Wunderbar's team time, to be within 30 seconds of Golden Guardian's time, with an extra obelisk just fought in the middle of your dungeon, is, I think, a very, very good news for Perplexed here. I think that suggests they're probably actually even a little bit faster if they didn't have to do that, or if they chose not to do that, which, a great place to be in, yeah.
That's right, and bodes well for them as they have to fight their way out of this lower bracket. As a result, there's going to be a ton of games for them to be playing, and again, we're just going to be watching as to what's going to come next for these guys, because I think in many cases we have high expectations for them, Zyro, because of how much experience that they really have had for all of MDI.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Perplex is such a weird case for me right now, right? I'm really worried for them, but this King's Rest does kind of help ease those worries a little bit here, but the way they played in the first map wasn't necessarily the greatest. They're about a minute behind in terms of their freehold run, and then the matches yesterday, like, I'm still questioning whether or not they have what it takes to compete with Wunderbar should they get to that point, but I mean, if they do get to that point, then they probably play pretty well for the rest of the tournament.
Well, that's the thing, is they need to get to that point. Yeah, we're jumping ahead of the gun on that one for sure. But let's start talking about what we saw out of that King's Rest, Radnos. What did you like?
Well, there was a lot of stuff I didn't like, and unfortunately most of it came from the side of the boys. This was just a really, really tragic run for them. There was just so much disaster packed into such a dungeon where this is a bit uncommon, right? King's Rest is usually not a dungeon where we see this much going wrong for a team. And the point that I would like to give some big credit for here is Perplexed doing the exact opposite of what they did yesterday. They just decided to fight Voidweaver Mouth here, and this, I think, is an amazing adjustment to their route. Unlike yesterday, where they lost that Ataldazar against Complexity Limit that was unlosable because they decided to just keep bashing their heads against 4 obelisks with Yasma, this time they decided that, hey, we're up against a team that has wiped twice and is going to continue to wipe in this dungeon. So we're just going to fight that extra Awakened Obelisk and reduce the chances that something could go horribly wrong for us, because the only way we lose is something going horribly wrong. So yesterday I criticized them for not doing that. Today I'm going to praise them for doing it. That was a great decision.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of times where people making, these quick audibles, and Tettles is calling it out, I believe, in the Tol Dagor run as well, making those quick decisions to decide, okay, it really is important for us to get a little bit of a gauge as to what our opponents are doing, always makes a big difference. And as we take a look at our bracket, we've eliminated 2 teams so far today, and 2 more series to go, with Complexity Limit, Deplete from Beyond, Ethical, and Perplexed still have more games to play to see if they're going to survive today's lower bracket and make it to tomorrow's Championship Sunday. So looking ahead, Nagura, we've got Complexity Limit and Deplete from Beyond, probably some of the most polarizing teams from each region as well.
Yeah, I think those next 2 games are going to be incredibly close. I mean, Complexity Limit against Deplete from Beyond, I think they're very similar teams when it comes to their playstyle. Like, they both have the potential to do incredibly well. They have the strategies available to them, but sometimes they're just really lacking in execution. They're just very inconsistent, both of those teams. So I really think this could go either way. depending on which team executes properly, depending on which team just has fewer wives, to be honest.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of times that there's going to be some spectacular deaths and spectacular big pulls as well. So we'll have to be looking at that, because if I'm not mistaken, I think we do have a Taldazar on the list as a potential dungeon for our next matchup. And Zyro, I don't know about you, but I'd really love to see an Atal redemption run from Complexity to see just how fast it can go if it does go right.
Oh yeah, for sure would love to see that. And then the other dungeons in here are pretty crazy too. Shrine of the Storm, if that's let through for Complexity Limit, we know they've had issues in that dungeon in the past, especially on Volzith. Workshop would be great. It's been banned against them every single match so far. We know they like running the mage, and Workshop is a great mage dungeon. And then, Freehold and Siege are also dungeons that are pretty good kind of raters for how well they're playing as well. So yeah, the whole series looks like it's good, and I'm curious to see what these teams pan out.
Lots to dig into on the other side of the break, but first, we'll be right back with more MDI action and 2 more elimination rounds. Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon Oh, Tettles. We talked about this, all right? Welcome back. I'm joined not only by Tettles, but Zyro and Nagura as well, as we're getting ready for another round of eliminations to be coming up very soon. We just now saw, if we want to take a quick look at our bracket, we saw the boys and Goosey Bad exiting the tournament. Both of our 4 seeds from the regions are now out. And now we'll be looking at our lower quarters coming up onto this one, Nagura. We're looking at Complexity Limit and Deplete from Beyond right now. As we were talking about, it's very, very polarizing teams in their performance. Never fear. As we take a look at our bracket, we can see.
Well.
Oh, Nagura,
Guys,
that was honestly, Nagura, that was incredibly intelligent. And do not worry, that was a great take.
We heard what you said. It was great.
Can you repeat it again?
Thank you. No.
No. Anyway, we've got Wunderbar and Golden Guardians in our upper finals. They'll be playing tomorrow, and they are guaranteed at least 3rd place. But we've got Complexity Limit, Deplete from Beyond, Ethical, and Perplex still in the tournament and fighting for their lives. And also Zyro for some improved prize pool.
Oh yeah, I mean, every win from this point on is a large pay increase. Our teams in the lower bracket here have already, guaranteed themselves $12,000 or $2,400 apiece. But every win from here on out is going to be a large pay jump leading up to that final prize pool for the winners. I mean, this is a big deal to go from the 5th, 6th bracket up to the 4th and potentially 3rd bracket. So there's a lot on the line for these teams in the lower bracket, starting with this game we have coming up right now.
Yep. And
not right now, but in a bit.
That's right. We're making sure all our teams are going to be ready before we get started. Like you said, there's going to be a lot on the line, and even more emphasis on how some of these teams are going to be matching up, because as you saw, Tettles, both of our 4th seeds from each region are now eliminated.
Yeah, both of the 4th seeds are eliminated, and with this, we are having the 3v3 battle. We're also going to see the battle of who is the better mage, and I'm fired up versus Dr. J. The true Great Gandalf challenge is going to come through today. We're going to see the Tri-Wizarding State Champion, and it all happens today on Mythic Dungeon International, so stay tuned.
I wish Tettles was here just now.
We're staying right here.
We're staying tuned, don't worry.
And Tettles just walks out the door and he's just gone. Puts the cat in his chair. He's like, stay tuned.
The cat would do a better job than I at analyzing these games.
I'm actually kind of annoyed you closed the door so we can't see the cat.
Yeah, me too.
The cat's napping, dude.
Sleeping on the job. Typical Tettles. Unfortunately, I think all our mics are working well, but let's check out some of our map pools as we're getting ourselves started. We do see the bans coming in, Nagura, and Ataldazar didn't get banned.
Oh my god, it is finally time to see that Ataldazar again.
Yes.
After the performance that Complexity Limit had yesterday. I mean, they ended up winning the Ataldazar, but definitely not in a clean manner, as they had 14 deaths. Thankfully, the team that they played against had even more deaths than them, so hopefully it doesn't happen for Deplete from Beyond.
That's right, and this is supposed to be a hyper-fast dungeon, a very rapid dungeon that we'll be looking at. How are you feeling, Zyro, about that Siege of Borealis ban coming up as well?
I think that's a pretty typical ban. If I'm not mistaken, I actually missed it there. I believe, yes, that was the ban from Complexity Limit, and we know they've had some issues with Siege of Borealis in the past, so it makes a lot of sense to see that would be gone pretty early on. I like the maps that are left open. We have a great map pool left open now. I mean, Ataldazar, quick dungeon. We've seen issues from Complexity Limit yesterday on that map, but potentially they could bring it back together. That average deaths number is pretty impressive from them there. I don't know if that's counting the run from yesterday. I don't think it is.
I don't think so either.
But we know that they can do well on that dungeon. And then Workshop, Mage Dungeon, maybe we'll even see Dr. J on the Mage too. We'll get that Giga Gandalf challenge like we're talking about from Tettles. And if we get to Freehold, that's a fantastic 3rd map.
That's right, and a lot of these dungeons are going to be putting these teams, pushing them to their absolute limits right now, and not taking into account some of the deaths that we saw yesterday out of complexity here. Very low average deaths overall, and the route that we saw out of them, while there were mistakes, if they actually were pulling it off their titles, it looked phenomenal.
Okay, so they pull the whole entire left side with double Colossus, which is, if the pull is able to be pulled off in a clean fashion, then that can save a significant amount of time over that of what we've seen from other teams. They also do the patent pending, run it down mid strategy, and then you snap your tank to Razan. But we're going to see how it ends up working out for both sides in just a moment.
All right, let's get into it. Taldazar starts right now between Complexity Limit and Deplete from Beyond.
I can feel the power.
And right away, we're going to have to see how the snap goes. Because right away, the biggest issue that we saw from Complexity Limit was when they did this snap, the mob snapped behind Max here and he instantly went down. But you can see instantly that change was made. They committed the bubble to him right away so that he wouldn't instantly go down. And Complexity Limit is off to the races here, and it worked well for them. So no major issues this time from them. Deplete from Beyond going for a similar strategy, and their trash pack is still alive and not yet melted. Those unholy DKs are going to have to do work for them here. Once somebody's mantles go off here, which could be an issue if heals go off afterwards, and Clicks has multiple fire debuffs, but he's able to get healed through it, and only the Juggernauts are left alive. So both teams able to deal with the trash pulls, but 12% more trash with trash mobs still to die on Deplete from Beyond side.
Yeah, that was actually a huge amount of trash they pulled on top here on Deplete from Beyond side. That was crazy, and the amount of healing coming out of Eagle here as well. He had 250k HPS, and Clicks almost went down with all of those debuffs and all of those casts going off because of that mantle that makes the mobs immune to Sucia. So there was no way for them to get any more interrupts off. So incredibly well done by them to be able to finish off this pull by having just all of those casts going through. And Complexity Limit, on the other hand, this is the pull they actually wiped on yesterday. So they did clean up their play. They didn't have any deaths at all. Perfectly clean execution on this trash plus Razan pull. But yeah, we'll see how they catch up on the trash they're missing. We saw them do this double Colossus pull yesterday, and they also wiped there. So let's see if they can pull it off this time around.
Oh yeah, I mean, they had a ton of more issues yesterday, so we'll have to keep an eye on them, make sure they're playing clean too. I'm interested to see what the major difference is going to be here in trash percentages, because it looks like Deplete from Beyond put this trash that Complexity Limit is gearing up for on top of their boss. They're waiting for Atrocity, it looks like, to get in position for this pull. I don't actually see where he is on screen right now. This is quite weird. There comes the misdirect. Oh, he's going back and getting the Colossus. That's what it was. And they're going for this massive pull here with the double Colossus, I believe. Yep, double Colossus coming in here. So it's going to be a lot of damage needed to come out from the Unholy DKs, and we're going to have to be able to deal with it. That Colossus running in late is going to be an issue, though. It didn't get some of that initial AoE burst, so they're going to have to deal with single target damage on it afterwards, and they're just going to have to kite this, because look at the HP on that Colossus. It is massive and has half HP still.
Yeah, this is actually going to be crazy. They might actually have to Shadow Melt off the aggro. We'll see as Max is trying to kite, but it does so much damage to him. He's trying to tank it off. This is actually quite impressive that he's managing to even tank this at all. And now he's... Yeah, it's just so much damage. Look how huge this thing is. But they did manage to finish it off now.
Oh no!
But Deplete from Beyond having 2 deaths as they pulled everything on top of Priestess here. Seagler going down too. This is going to be a full team wipe. There's no way. There's any way for them to recover this. And this is a huge amount of time loss for Deplete from Beyond.
That was a ridiculous pull from Complexity Limit as well. They went from 18 to 57% trash. 39% of the trash wiped off the board just like that. And even with a little bit of an inconsistency, that Colossus being massive, chunking Max with a 70% of his max HP melee, we'll see if Complexity Limit is able to pull off this pull. It looks like the Holy DKs have their damage set and are starting to go to town here. Well, the DKs are still alive. They only have 1 battle res available. They have to somehow deal with the rest of this trash, though. It looks like they're going to get fired up and alive, but this is really unfortunate. The boss also got some healing off, too, and they're probably going to have to get through 2 more transfusion phases, even if they're able to pull this together. The problem is, once they start going further on into the fight, those Hunter freezing traps are going to start coming back off cooldown, and they're going to have to make sure they keep those masks CC'd. These transfusions from the Priestess are finally dealt with here, but we're going to have to keep an eye on this transfusion from the boss here. As long as they all have the debuffs, they should be fine, but that was a scary moment there from Complexity Limit with 2 deaths on the board. No battle res on the board left for them as well, so they might not have that available for the final boss if they're playing clean.
Dr. J going down for Deplete from Beyond. They do have a Battle Rest available. They get him back up immediately. And this is an insane pull that Deplete from Beyond is doing here. In fact, not only did they pull the whole Priestess room on top of Priestess, but they also pulled the 2 Juggernaut packs that are at the bottom next to the Obelisk. So they succeed the Confessors with the Freezing Trap by the Hunters, and then Rentari just ran through, picked up all of the trash except the Colossus, and pulled it all the way to Priestess. So this is why they had so much problems with this pull. This is an insane pull coming out of the Deplete from Beyond. They now managed to finish off most of the trash. They did have 1 death on Dr. J, but with the Battle Rest being available to them, they're going to get all of the damage on Priestess. Unfortunately, Rentari didn't get that blood debuff here, so instead of damaging the boss, Rentari was unfortunately healing the Priestess here.
They still have that Juggernaut alive at full HP, and Misty Igloo goes down. They don't have a battle res for him. There's no healer alive. They're gonna somehow have to heal themselves through this next transfusion and probably have to get another transfusion afterwards with only 4 players alive. Deplete from Beyond could be throwing this dungeon right now, but even on the other side with Complexity Limit, we saw Twisted dropping incredibly low there to this trash pull, but he is able to heal himself up with that Way of the Crane, so it looks like Complexity Limit is back stable, but Rentari is going down to the transfusion, and with Priestess Saloons at 11%, there's no way they're gonna be able to finish it off, and it's going to be another full team wipe for Deplete from Beyond.
Yeah, just go 100% trash percentage now for Complexity Limit.
And it looks like they're just going to be going Obelisk skip to Volcall, and then Obelisk skip to the final. Well, they don't need to Obelisk skip to the final boss, right? They can just run to the final boss. So yeah, Complexity Limit done with all the trash, and it looks like they're clearly going to be kiting Obelisk trash like we saw yesterday as well. So only boss is left, and with 7 minutes left in the dungeon, that mark that we saw from the regular season will be a sub 10-minute run. I doubt they'll go below that, but if I had to guess, with clean play, it could end up being something around an 11-minute run, so we'll see if they're able to keep it clean.
Yeah, definitely. Incredible run by Complexity Limit so far. And Atal, I mean, it seems like not a very difficult dungeon, but in the MDI, it becomes so much more difficult just because how fast you can go. And in the MDI, if there's something you can do, then you have to pull it off, right? But just because the other team is going to pull it off, and if you want to compete with their time, you have to do it too. And this is why we see those insane pulls coming out in Atalasar. It's just one huge pull into another. Even though you're running out of offensive cooldowns and defensive cooldowns, you just have to chain big pull into big pull. And this is why there's so many issues for these teams, specifically in a dungeon like Atalasar, which usually seems like a dungeon that is not insanely difficult, but they're making it difficult on themselves because of just a huge amount of time pressure that you have when those big pulls are possible to do.
Oh yeah, for sure. And one of the things I want to touch on as well is it looks like we have some observer lag on the side of Complexity Limit there is, there we go, nice and caught up. One of the things I want to touch up on as well is we talked about this as well yesterday in their Ataldazar, right? Perplex ended up essentially throwing their Ataldazar run by not opting to go for a safer strategy on Yasma. Do you think this is a situation where Complexity Limit might want to consider doing that? We've talked about this, I think, a lot on broadcast, but with the lead that they have, with the 9 deaths on the board, as well as probably about a 3-minute lead in terms of dungeon progression, it almost makes sense to consider going for a safer strat. But I'm not really sure what a safer strat would be, right? Would you like kill 2 awakened mobs and then pull the last boss with 2, or I think you just have to commit to the kite strat, right? And you have to consider in your mind there's no way you're going to wipe 2 at 3 times.
Yeah, I almost think you have to commit because, like, killing 1 obelisk is still not gonna make the killing strat easier, right? If you have to kite anyway, then it doesn't matter if there's 3 awaken mobs or 4 or 2, right? So either you kill as many obelisks as you can to be able to not having to do the kiting strat, but the last boss is pretty dangerous to play with awaken mobs, and therefore I don't think you can play it with 3. So you would have to deal with 2 obelisks, and I think that will just be too much of a time loss. I don't think, I mean, yeah, they're far ahead, but at some point it's just going to be too much time that you spend dealing with those obelisks.
Yeah, and they're not as far ahead of Deplete from Beyond as they were behind yesterday versus Perplex, so it's not like they have all the time in the world to throw at this dungeon here. And unfortunately, during this skip, it looks like Eric wasn't able to get his Feign Death off, so he's going to be going down with Shadow Meld off on cooldown. They'll just get a quick res on him from Twisted. They've got that time to spare right now, but this is going to be close. If they end up having some catastrophic failures here on this boss, it could let Deplete from Beyond back into the dungeon. So any small mistake like that, the nerves have got to be pounding right now for them.
Yeah, definitely. And this boss, it really takes a long time. It has so much HP, even on a fortified setting. So they're gonna have to play perfectly for a long time if you do this kiting strat. Not only does Twisted have to kite the Awaken mobs perfectly and make sure they're not somehow snapping back to the group, but the rest of the team needs to survive without a healer. And the Soul Rend does quite a bit of damage once it does go off on the group. So definitely want to make sure to deal with all of that properly.
Yeah, and just taking a look at their gear here, none of them are running that rebooting bitband. They're all running overclocking bitbands for that extra damage, the extra haste that they get. They're just going to be solely relying on the death strikes from the DKs and probably just, I don't know, some sort of passive leech or exhilaration on the hunter. And it looks like it's really unfortunate timing already for Atrocities. He's gotten 15 stacks of that eye corruption, so he's gonna have to pop a personal cooldown or maybe that aspect of the turtle for the very first soul rend, just so he doesn't get one shot by it, because it does do about 50 to 60% of your HP on this difficulty. He does pop the exhilaration to heal himself up.
Yeah, there we go. Has to already use that acceleration to be able to stay alive. Now, the Death Knights shouldn't have as big of a problem as Atrocity on the Hunter, just because they can Death Strike themselves up to full HP, so they do have a lot of self-healing available to them. But another thing is also just the tank, right? Max staying alive on this boss. Yasma does do quite a bit of tank damage with that tank-ish
run we've seen from them is what we want to see more of moving forward.
It really is, and big congratulations to Complexity Limit for getting some redemption as well, because like you mentioned, Zyro, it's not the fastest we've ever seen, but I think that there's a number of critical areas that Settles could tell us about that, hey, they can start making some improvements, they can start getting to that point.
I do believe that they can absolutely get to that point, but for a Tulazar, I feel like this is kind of a cursed dungeon with how people are trying to just pull it now. Once you start snapping your tank to the mobs as opposed to your tank snapping the mobs to you, you're kind of, everything's just kind of up in the air for
this is not the natural order.
Dude,